We are about to glance genuine genius, something that will make clear and remove the tint from being able to see what we would call God's fingerprint. It has been long said that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, referring to the depths, capacity, and intricacy of insight of she or he who is truly looking, or deeper yet, beholding intertwined with both thought and feeling. But that depth, that capacity, and intricacy of insight in some cases does not only apply metaphorically or symbolically for us seeing something surfacely, and that beauty only all the more heightened due to us knowing what is beyond the surface of it, or it reaching something beyond the surface of us, or both, as this may apply most apparently amongst the angels, or in the moment, more commonly put, amongst people. It also applies when it comes to the beauty and understanding altogether, or in general, such as when the cell within the human body was first seen. It could have appeared to some as it was just a blob floating around within us. However, today, with heightened clarity and further advancements within our microscopes, or in other words, our lines of sight, we are able to see that what once could have appeared as just a blob, surfacely, has a world, if not a universe, within it, of almost unexplainable complexity, precision, and ultimately, beauty. In this same sense, we are about to see how just one verse contains a universe of complexity, precision, and ultimately unravel, reveal further depths of its beauty. There are so many in our world at the moment that can see the beauty of the world on the outside, the sun, the moon, the sky, the stars, the clouds, the oceans, lakes, and rivers, the trees, flowers, and foods in general, and when at their best within us as people. Of course, including the most cherished, the best within us that physically now is existing on the outside of us, our children, which we still try to nourish in different ways with the best within us in forms of knowledge and encouragement. And what can be the struggle to live, let alone to thrive? Though those before mentioned beauties remain a constant, still in that very struggle, some of the less obvious beauties of the world can become hazy, if not questioned, if there at all. As we look for the meaning and reasons within our lives and life as a whole, though some of us feel it in their own ways, that is the good, the beauty in the world, and despite what bad or ugly happenings, still ultimately their scales always tip back toward the good. That very good that they see, they hear, and they feel. And there are some that become stuck in the reality of a surrounding ugly situation or environment and find it difficult to become that good in face of bad, that beauty regardless of what ugly, that light in and through the dark. We're about to have an in-depth look at the first verse of creation and show that it, and ultimately you, not only were not just some by chance thing that happened to be, but in fact a complete, though complex, precise, and ultimately beautiful work of art. There are some that before seeing such grounded, sound, solid proof, thought that such verses and historical spiritual scripts were made up gradually in ignorance of those that were ignorant of both themselves and all that was around them, if even at all trying to make sense of it. Here we are about to show further evidence that it is actually thought like that which has been the lack of sight, the lack of knowing and understanding of what was and truly is. However, in reason, there are those who have held such frame of mind and thought that still agree that if indeed there is an intended, intelligent, designed creation, we will see unmistakable signatures, and in showing the potential of our race, will show that those that may have thought, let alone claimed, that such holdings were written by savages, not in the positive sense that some may mean today, though that positive sense is true, but with that a reminder to mind oneself as its behavior in the moment, what describes or depicts being that in the negative sense, not just living in ancient times. So here, in showing the true potential of our race, and showing that this was not only not written by savages, but by savants, by genius, as we're about to witness a mathematical marvel that will leave one astounded as to how this happened in ancient times, within the first verse of creation based on the number 7, a signature of a symphony of sevens. Now, the first verse in Genesis is the introductory sentence or the prelude to what is renowned as the 7 days of creation. And that first verse, foreshadowing the 7 days of creation, is 7 words long. Now, though we're going to try our best to stick to the subject at hand, it's important to note that in Hebrew, the word day does not necessarily mean a 24-hour day as we are accustomed to, but in essence, it can also be used as a marker of an occurrence. Keep in mind, for example, the sayings which we still use today, such as back in the day, or back in my day, or en mi dia, as this holds across languages across the world. But that first verse that introduces the 7 days of creation, those 7 phases, those 7 occurrences, is 7 words long. And though we'll get back to the number 7 here presently, it's also notable to review that the sentence itself can be broken up in 4 parts: the subject, the verb, and the 2 objects, as it's fitting that the first verse in Genesis, the first verse of creation, would be held in 4 parts, as the number 4 so often represents the cycle of completion, such as the 4 seasons, spring, summer, fall, and winter. Also all-encompassing phrases such as the 4 corners of the earth or the 4 winds. It also further goes to note the completion of cycles, such as in the 22 Hebrew letters, the last numeric value of the last letter, which we will see more of, is 400. And speaking of having to go through cycles from the first letter to the last, it is also held that 400 years is the amount of time within the cycles that the Hebrews were said to go into bondage until that time was up. The number 4 also relates directly to the 7 days of creation within the 10 commandments, wherein the 4th commandment speaks of the 7 days of creation and the keeping of the Sabbath. So this first verse, beginning the 7 days of creation, is written out in 7 words and altogether 28 letters, which is 7 times 4, or 4 sevens. Now we're about to go deeper into the interwoven, etched, and encoded signature of sevens throughout the first verse in Genesis, which by all measures and means would be difficult, if not impossible, to replicate today. Here we see a layout of all 28 letters counted out, the first 14 and the last 14 to come out to 28, or once again, 4 sevens. As we see here, the first 3 words of the first sentence has 14 letters. That is 7 times 2, or 2 sevens, 7 plus 7. The second half of the verse, the last 4 words, has 14 letters. That is also 7 times 2, or 2 sevens, 7 plus 7. And we will continue to see the signature of 7 all throughout, as the middle word and the word before it have 7 letters altogether. The middle word and the word after it also make up 7 letters altogether. The third, fifth, and 7th words also have 14 letters altogether. 7 times 2, or 2 sevens, 7 plus 7. Now, what we are seeing here is a feature of the Hebrew alphabet, in that every letter is intertwined with a numeric value, or closer put, a numeric representation. So in essence, each letter, each word, and each number can be read out phonetically as sentences or read as numeric mathematical formulas. Something that we may not have right away expected to have existed in ancient times. Now, as mentioned earlier, the last letter being 400, now you'll notice the first 10 numbers run 1 through 10, and then after that advance by tens, 20, 30, 40, all the way up to 90, and then after that advance in hundreds, 100, 200, 300, to the last letter, 400. At a later time, we will further be going into this alphabet, which serves as being read both verbally and mathematically. For the moment, we are looking at each numeric representation as we're about to go deeper into the first verse of Genesis and count out the numeric value of each letter to see what signatures are held deeper within it. Here we are adding together the numeric representations of the first and last letters of all 7 words in the first verse of Genesis. And as we see here, that value comes out to 1,393, which is 7 times 199, or 199 sevens. And as we continue to microscopically dissect and take apart the first verse, when we take the first and last letter of the first and the third word, it equates to 497. 7 times 71 is 497. 71 sevens. And here we're seeing the sum of the first and last letters of the first half of the verse has come out to 42, which is 7 times 6, 6 sevens. And here the sum of the first and the last letter of the second half of the verse comes out to 91, which is 7 times 13, or 13 sevens. Now here we'll take a look at the second word, created, which has a numeric value of 203, which is 7 times 29, 29 sevens. And continuing to go even further in depth, the sum of the first letter, the two middle letters, and the last letter is 133. 7 times 19, which is 19 sevens. And as you're seeing here, we are adding together the third, the fifth, and the seventh words, God, the heavens, and the earth, which comes out to 777. 7 times 111, 111 sevens. And now for those same three words, God, heavens, and earth, we are going to add the letters by alphabetical order, not the numeric representations, such as the first letter is 1, the next letter is the 12th, then the 5th, the 10th, and the 15th for the first word. The second word, the 5th letter, the 21st, the 9th letter, the 10th, the 15th, and that is the heavens. And now the earth is the 5th letter, then made up of the 1st, the 20th, the 18th, and that comes out to 147, which is 7 times 7 times 3, 147, or 7 times 21, 21 sevens. And now in the same exact fashion, when we take the first three words and add them up according to the alphabetical order, not the numeric representation, the first letter used here is the second, then the 20th, then the 1st, the 21st, then the 10th, the 22nd, then the 2nd, plus the 20th, plus the 1st, plus the 1st, plus the 12th, the 5th, the 10th, the 13th, and that comes out to 140, which is 7 times 20, or 20 sevens. Now within those first three words, still counting by the alphabetical order in which they appear in the alphabet itself, 8 of those letters are even numbers, and they sum to a total of 98, which is 7 times 14, or 14 sevens. And of the 14 letters, 6 are odd, equaling a sum of 42. And because showing just how artful and masterful this is, I know it's getting rather detailed, so that it doesn't get tedious, we're going to sing out these next digits together. So here we're taking 1 plus 21, another 1, then adding 1, the 5th, the 5th, 13, which is 7 times 6, or 6 sevens. Now, still focusing on those three words, when we take each individual letter and times it by the place in which they are written in the sentence, such as in the first word, the second letter is used first. So we're going to times 2, the second letter, times 1, the first letter used, and so on as you see here. And what it comes out to altogether is 1008, which ultimately 1008 is 7 times 144, or 144 sevens. And here, when we add the products or the answers to what we times that equates to less than 10, it comes out to 14. 7 times 2, or 2 sevens. And now, zooming in even further with our microscope, we're going to add up the answers to all of the alphabetical letters that are under the 10th place, such as adding the answer to 2 times 1, which is 2, to 1 times 3, which is 3, and so on, as you're seeing here. And altogether, adding that up comes out to 98, which is 7 times 14, or 14 sevens. And now going even deeper still, when we take those answers, all 14 of them, and add together the units, which is perhaps best described as the single digit furthest to the right if you were writing out this problem on paper or on a chalkboard, for example. When we add up all of those single digits as highlighted here, the total sum of all of those numbers is 28, which is 7 times 4, or 4 sevens. And now when we look at the 10th letter and the letters that we use after it and add up the products of the numbers that we times by those letters, just as you're seeing here, that comes out to 910. Which is 7 times 130, or 130 sevens. And now enhancing even further the power or the zoom of our microscope even deeper, we are going to take the first and the last letters of each of the 5 words in between the first and the last word. And when we add up the sum of those first and last letters, it comes out to 896, which is 7 times 128, or 128 sevens. And as we zoom in even deeper on the word God, and we split that numeric value into 2 units and add 8 plus 6, it comes out to 14. 7 times 2, 2 sevens. And now when we add up the first figure of the numeric value of each of the letters used to spell it out, it also comes out to 14. The 1 in the first letter, the 3 being the first figure in the number 30, the number 5, the number 1 being the first figure in the number 10, and the number 4 being the first figure in the number 40, which again comes out to 14. 7 times 2, 2 sevens. Now we're going to add together the 3 words with an even number of letters, which is the first having 6, the middle having 2, and the last having 4, which comes out to a total of 1,610, which is 7 times 230, or 230 sevens. Now we're going to add together the numeric value of the last letters of the first and the last word, which, as we see here, is 400 plus 90, which comes out to 490, or 7 times 70, 70 sevens. And now adding together the total numeric value of the first letter from the first word and the first letter from the last word, which is 2 plus 5, which comes out to 7, another signature of the symphony of 7. Now remember, all of this was contained in the very first verse of Genesis by itself. As we delved together into the universe held in just one verse, there are mathematical encodings throughout the ancient scripts altogether, and features of different fashions that continue to stick out as highlights, such as looking at the number 7 throughout the rest of the book in the scope that we have been today. The number 7 appears 287 times. That is 7 times 41, or 41 sevens. The word seventh appears 98 times. That is 7 times 14, or 14 sevens. The word 70 appears 56 times. That is 7 times 8, or 8 sevens. And the word sevenfold appears a total of 7 times. With such harmony, the sewing together of this symphony of sevens is something simply superb. And as we are about to show further evidence of, is not just a signature of supremacy over the self, but indeed further proof that we have been walking with God since the start. The connection that we are about to go over next truly does align like the stars themselves. And as amazing, as in awe that it can leave one, ultimately, I truly hope that it serves to soothe the soul, the heart, the mind, as to express what I stated at the beginning of this sharing, that you are not some by chance accident. You do belong. And though can be in all aspects of the word, a complex, but yet complete, precise work of art. In fact, as timeless a work of art as not just what we have just reviewed, but what we are about to see next, as we fully encompass the significance of it. A work of art left by those that we have all descended from to remind us of exactly that, of exactly the royalty that you are. Now remember that altogether, in the verse that foreshadows the 7 days of creation, there are 7 words, and within those 7 words are 28 letters, 4 sevens. And it just so happens that 28 is the 7th triangular number, as we are seeing here. So when we add together all of the numeric values in the first verse of creation, as we are seeing here, the total numeric value of the first verse in Genesis is 2,701, which is the 73rd triangular number. So to bring this all home together, the full numeric total value of the first verse in Genesis, 2,701, is the 73rd triangular number. Within that first verse of Genesis, there is a total of 28 letters, which is the 7th triangular number. A triangle is the exact shape of the 7th wonder of the world, the only one left still standing. Still standing out of all of the other wonders of the world that once were. Again, a timeless work of art, a representation of exactly what you are, as not only is 28 the 7th triangular number, not only the pyramid the 7th wonder of the world, but it is held that it was built by the 7th patriarch since Adam, Enoch. Now, as we follow that trail of evidence, those numbers that have long been said do not lie, we come to an outstanding connection that would be unbelievable to some if it were not literally written in stone with regard to measurements and dimensions. Now we will delve deeper into these specific verses and more that are specific to the pyramid. But to review what proves to be a mathematic miracle, in the same sense that we were adding up the numeric representations of each letter in the first verse of Genesis, when we add up the numeric representation to each letter, add up each sentence of each verse, that is renowned as the Great Pyramid text of Scripture, Isaiah chapter 19, verses 19 and 20. Now again, we will go deeper into this verse in another sharing, but in essence, the verse reads, "In that day there will be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt, and a pillar to the Lord at its border. It will be a sign and a witness that the Lord of heaven's armies is worshipped in the land of Egypt." Now when we add together the total numeric value of the Great Pyramid text of Scripture, as we see mapped out here, it comes out to 5,449. Now 5,449 is renowned as being the height of the Great Pyramid, from its base to the summit platform, otherwise known as the capstone base. $5,449 pyramid inches, and the total numeric value of the pyramid scripture text in Isaiah, 5,449. Furthermore, it has been computed that 5,449 449 pyramid inches is the distance from the floor line entrance to the end of an underground shaft as shown here. Now, particularly in the near future, we're going to go deeper into the connections between mathematics, the scriptures, history, and the pyramids. But before we go on here, we're going to address that in the moment, it's commonly said that the pyramids are associated with the pharaohs and were used as tombs. Now, outside of it never being actually shown that a mummy was found in any of the pyramids, out of the historians that traveled to go study and report on the Great Pyramid, such as Herodotus, Diodorus Siculus, Strabo, and Plutarch, there are historians such as Diodorus who openly report that there has never been a pharaoh or any body found in the pyramids. We will delve deeper into this subject in a video specifically based on the pyramid itself. However, as to stating that it was Enoch whom built the pyramid, it has been long held by Arab historians such as al-Makrizi and al-Masudi that a king by the name of Sarid built the pyramids. And it has been shown that the Coptic or ancient Egyptians believed that Thoth built the pyramids, as is held in what is called the Emerald Tablets. And Greek historians have reported that Hermes built the pyramids. Now Hermes, such as Thoth, was reported to excel when it came to mathematics, when it came to the sciences, and when it came to the keeping of a calendar. Now it has been traced back that when the Greek historians went to Egypt to study and report on the history there, tracing the history shows that Thoth became Hermes in Greek, and the exact same attributes, such as excelling in the measurements of mankind, mathematics, the sciences, and the keeping of a calendar, time, directly support the conclusion of the summing up of that historical line. And completely in line with those skill sets, it has been held by the Arab scholars that Sarid completed the pyramid in order to preserve ancient wisdom in regards to mathematics, geometry, and the sciences of mankind, so they would not be lost prior to a flood. And ultimately, Sarid, also known as Idris by Muslim scholars, Sarid ultimately translates to Enoch in Hebrew. And the alignment of characteristics continues to be evident, as Enoch is renowned to have been highly skilled in ultimately the measurements of mankind, sciences, mathematics, and also the keeping of a calendar. These characteristic records have been preserved and taught since ancient times and are still done so today, such as Enoch keeping a calendar has been taught by teachers such as Rachel Elior until this very day. We will go deeper into Enoch in the Book of Enoch in a later sharing, and as to how he was taught by the angels, that is, his immediate family, as we are all angels, and as this information was being passed down to him to preserve, as stated in other words in the book Antiquities of the Jews by the historian Josephus, that the sons of Seth and ultimately the sons of Adam, that the sons of Seth would build a pillar of stone to preserve and pass down their knowledge to future generations. And as was ultimately preserved and recorded in the very measurements and dimensions of the pyramid, which we will go further into, again on a sharing specifically focused on that. There is also the account of Manetho, known as an Egyptian high priest and historian, and the records of his conversation with the Greek historian Herodotus. They lived during the time of Ptolemy's reign in Egypt, after the passing of Alexander the Great. And it's held that through an interpreter was speaking of the span of time from the origins of the pyramid up until the current day in the moment. And though it would appear that at least from that point until today, there were some things that happened along the timeline that were condensed throughout the course of time. So at a later sharing, we're going to go deeper into this conversation and compare the points thereof to a historical timeline highlighted by archaeological evidence and also alignments with written records throughout history. Now, it's important to note that Manetho was known as an Egyptian in the sense that you may more commonly think of in regards to what was the belief of multiple gods in the moment, and also, again during that specific time frame, those in Macedonia and Greece who also during that time frame believed in multiple gods. Now again, we're going to go deeper into this conversation at a later time, but that was mentioned to highlight the fact that Manetho states that the pyramids were built by those who firmly stamped out idolatry in the land at the time that they were there and created the Great Pyramid. And he then goes on to state that they later migrated eastward and established the city of Salem, later known as Jerusalem. He also goes on to state that they established the worship of the one true God in completing the pyramid. Now it being held that the sons of Adam, the sons of Seth, constructed the Great Pyramid to preserve all of their knowledge therein, which indeed, until this day, reflects a mathematical precision, a feat encompassing all of the measurements of mankind, which would be difficult, if not impossible, to still replicate today. And as the pyramid is so often referred to as the Bible written in stone, it is directly reflective of the mathematical precision, the mathematical marvel in the very first verse and found throughout the holy text. But that very first verse, which in itself mathematically forms a triangle, forms a pyramid. It is truly a telling thing to see that such ancient marks of mastery are our true origins, whereas sometimes one might find it hard to find the words to express themselves or to say anything verbally or phonetically in a coherent form at all. And here, in ancient times, we're seeing perfect verbal phonetic communication intertwined with mathematical mastery. The unison of phonetic and verbal communication with the realization of what to some may have been a metaphorical concept, that is, that mathematics is a language in and of itself. Now, though we will be going over more in a video more specific to the pyramid, we're going to take a look at one of the connections, one of the strands, which even more intimately binds the first verse and the pyramids. It is one of the mathematical constants, renowned to be so essential, it is called a part of the scaffolding of the universe, let alone used in multiple formulas and branches of mathematics, such as trigonometry and geometry. And though this will be more than food for thought, it is the mathematical constant known as pi. Finding mathematical constants such as pi and the golden ratio encoded in the structure of the Great Pyramid is direct reflection of Enoch and the sons of Seth, the sons of Adam, permanently cementing a physical memorial of the ancient knowledge, the ancient wisdom. There are those who are of the opinion that the approximation to pi came from using a Stone Age wheel. However, in both Babylon and ancient Egypt, the second place after the decimal in pi was off by 2, versus in the Great Pyramid, it is the closest approximation of pi that can be calculated or computed, as precise as it gets when it comes to those 2 places after the decimal point. As here we're seeing a simple example of the height of a pyramid having the same relationship to its base as the radius of a circle does to its circumference. And though we will go far deeper into simplifying the detail in another sharing, relics that were found inside of the pyramid itself suggest that it was more than just a wheel which was used to encode pi into the pyramids, but a far deeper knowledge, not just of their surroundings, but as to our origins, our beginnings, as it has been held in the Kabbalah that at the beginning of the universe, God concentrated, honed energy into a single sphere, a single dot, that then expanded into what is renowned as the Big Bang. Now, after seeing simply how pi is embedded into the structure of the Great Pyramid, we're also going to see how it is bound to the first verse of Genesis, and how pi is interwoven, encoded in that very first verse of creation. Now, the smallest whole number approximation of pi is 22 divided by 7. But we are going to once again turn up the power of the microscope, focus in on the resolution, and zoom in deeper than the relation between the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, forming the 7 words of creation that represent the 7 days, 7 phases, 7 occurrences that resulted in forming creation, the universe, the world as we know it. Now, what we're going to do is in the exact same fashion in which we began. We're going to calculate the numeric values of letters used within the first verse. And specifically, we're going to add together the beginning letter to each of the 7 words in the first verse of Genesis. Now, starting with the first letter of the first word, Bet, which equals 2. First letter of the second word, also Beit, which equals 2. First letter of the third word, Aleph, which equals 1. Then of the fourth word, again Aleph, equaling 1. Then of the fifth word, Hey, which equals 5. Then the first letter of the sixth word, Vav, equals 6. And then the first letter of the seventh word, again Hey, which equals 5. So the total sum of the initial letters of each of the 7 words is 22. 22, the sum of the initial letters of the first 7 words. And also, in other words, 22 divided by 7 is the average value of the initial letters. 22 divided by 7, the smallest whole number approximation for pi. Now, to even further complete the connection between pi and the first verse in Genesis, we are first going to add up the numeric value for every letter in the word Torah, which in Hebrew is the Bible, can also mean teaching, guidance, direction, or law. Here we're adding together the numeric values of Tav, 400, Vav, 6, Resh, 200, and He, 5. So the complete gematria for the word Torah is 611. So now we're about to see how the numeric value for the Torah, 611, which is in essence a way of saying, expressing Torah in the language of pure mathematics. So now, how that 611 and the total numeric value of the first verse in Genesis, that 2,701, are tied into pi. It has been computed that in the mathematical constant known as pi 3.14, the number 3 standing for so many things, such as a start, a process, and a completion. Wherein here we are speaking of the first verse of Genesis, the verse of creation. And after the decimal point in pi, if we add together the 611 digits after the decimal point, it has been calculated that that amount comes out to 2,701, directly reflective of the total numeric value of the first verse in Genesis. And in further reinforcing the connection of pi and the first verse in Genesis, when we take the number of the letters times the product of the letters, which is the sum of numerals times together, and divide that by the number of the words times the product of the words, we also come out to pi, to at least 4 places after the decimal point. Here we have the sum of timesing 28, as in the 28 letters, by each of their numeric values. And counting that out to 4 decimal places comes out to 6.6886. And now timesing the 7 words times each of their total numeric values comes out to 2.1290. And as we divide those sums, as you're seeing here, it takes the shape of pi out to 4 decimal places. And though we will be delving even deeper into factual relations and connections, take a moment to situate the fact that we just clearly saw how a mathematical constant is directly related, intertwined, and embedded with both an ancient physical structure and an ancient language, which again, all three drawing connections to one another. This first verse, and the ancient language in general, not only effectively communicating efficiently, but taking into account all that we have just verified and witnessed, it is complete poetic proficiency, intertwined with mathematic magnificence, and marks that masters such as Moses and those both before and after were not only preserving and protecting records which clearly were truly holy by every aspect of the word, which at the root definition can mean set apart, can mean special, holy, which realities such as that of which we have just gone over are further proof of how we ourselves have been set apart, special, as you are the crown jewel of creation. Now, even though we just went through reviewing almost inexplicable elegance, a display of vivid virtuosity in which letters infused with numbers formed words which equated to formulas, and miracles emerging mathematically when you take into account the computed odds of such a series, such a symphony of sevens consecutively appearing as we just went over. A mathematic marvel displaying grounded yet intricate symmetry and at the same time wonder, as we saw a universe held in one verse. Whereas not only in a symphony of sevens, but in symmetry, as that verse coming out to 28 letters, which is 4 sevens, and the wonder of those 28 letters equating to the 7th triangular number, and the verse in total equating to the 73rd triangular number. Dimensions of a shape of a pyramid, which turns out to be the 7th wonder of the world. And then, furthermore, accounts reflecting that it was designed by the 7th patriarch since Adam. And though this series, this symphony, this signature of sevens may be surreal, it still stands to state that springing from those very first 7 words, those 7 days of creation, that you are indeed set apart. You are indeed special.